Okay, great. Thanks. I actually haven't used this platform before, so I'm sure something will go wrong, probably very quickly. I'm not positive what you're seeing right now. Can you see my camera as well as the screen?
Yes.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, good. Okay, well, so I'm Doug Horgan. I'm a contractor. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of building diagnostics and play with a lot of pretty fun tools, and I'd like to share some of those things now. I think for some of you, you'll probably already know a lot of this stuff, but there's always something you can pick up, and I do try to throw in a story or two as we go along. So I'm just going to talk about the tools that I use to figure stuff out and some of the pluses and minuses of using those, the things that we've actually been able to figure out with them. And actually, first let me shout out to that last presentation. That was really great. I didn't know that there was a sort of methodology for using a pick to evaluate wood. I just sort of jammed the pick. I knew you could use it, but I didn't know that that was some really great stuff actually. So there you go. Like I jammed stuff into rotted wood, and when it goes in easy, I think it's rotted. I didn't realize there was all that extra stuff. So that was great. And maybe if we're lucky, something like that will show up tonight as I talk. All right. So let me start with the first two diagnostic tools that I use, and as set up by y'all, I do a lot of moisture investigations. Really, when a lot of the things that go wrong with water, with buildings, is water issues, right? And so I'm often using these two tools. The humidity meter, the one in this picture is an expensive Fluke, and I still own it, but it reads like 8% off on humidity, so it's not very much use. And it would have cost more than a new meter to get it calibrated. So I'm now using a much less expensive one. I think this was $60.
Can I interrupt for just 1 second?
Please do.
Right. If everybody will, at the top of your screen, you'll see you got an option for who's talking, for who you view. If you select who's talking, then you will see Doug rather than everybody at once. Select who's talking, and then you'll be able to see what he's showing you. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's going to be important. I'm actually trying to use the camera to show stuff in this. And, let me know if it's not working out. I can switch back and forth from camera to the presentation.
No, you look good. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, so, the humidity meters have gotten inexpensive. I mean, really inexpensive, right? You can go to the home center and buy 3 for $20. The accuracy on those, maybe so-so, the durability, so-so. But anyway, having a good humidity meter can be very helpful. When you walk into a house and there's some weird stuff going on or building, it's important to know what the humidity level is. And does it change in the area where the problem is compared to other parts of the building? As we know, if temperatures get below the dew point of the air, which is another way of expressing humidity level, then condensation will start to form on any surface that's below the dew point of the air surrounding it. And that can really help you figure things out. The picture in the presentation where I'm holding the humidity meter up in front of, I'm in an indoor pool building that is failing. And I don't know if you can see that, but the relative humidity is 86%, 85.9 at 83 degrees. And that is a spectacular, unbelievable, crazy high level of humidity. And that's what happens when you have a heated pool without a cover in a building. So, it actually wasn't that much of a surprise that the building was having some trouble. Basically every surface that's colder than, I think, maybe 78 degrees was getting condensation on it. So it was cold. I mean, it was humid. And then the other tool that I use every day is a moisture meter. I've been using these Aquant ones, protimeter or protimeter. I should really learn how they say that. I like them. I like having a pinless one. I like one that has lights and sounds, just because it makes the work quicker. I went for years without a pinless meter, and I got a lot done. And then I went for years without one that had lights or sounds, and I got a lot done. It just was a little bit slower and less convenient. You kind of had to carry a flashlight around with you, and you had to, really lean down to see the screen in the dark corner of the closet. With the meters that have lights and sounds, when you get to something wet, you know it. And also, it's really easy to test by pressing it on your palm. So that's my 2 cents on moisture meters. And I had a moisture meter for a long time before I had an infrared camera, which is the next thing we're going to talk about. Infrared cameras, well, they used to be crazy expensive. They're actually not that bad right now if you can settle for a so-so version. The infrared, I think the moisture meter is actually more useful and more important than the infrared camera. The infrared camera does speed things up, and it allows you to do other stuff besides moisture investigations. So that's good. Sorry about that. All right. So yeah, next tool, infrared camera. I'll show a little bit more about that. I guess I really wish we were in a room and I could say, raise your hand if you have an infrared camera. My guess is a lot of folks here do. You'll see in a minute, I have an infrared camera that attaches to my phone that costs $300, and it's every bit as good as the, I don't have it here, but I have a $2,000 camera we bought 10 years ago, and the phone one is actually a little bit better. So the price and performance have really come into a place where I think if you're doing much investigation or diagnostics, it's certainly worth spending a few $100 to get the phone plug-in version. And I still use the handheld individual camera all the time instead of the phone plug-in one. And that's mostly because it's kind of a pain to hold your phone delicately with this camera snapped into it. It's much easier to just swing around the dedicated instrument. But as I said, the phone one is just as good, and you can get a ton done with those. They're really fantastic. So in this picture, I'm also using a blower door. Again, I wish everyone could raise their hands. At this point, I think pretty much everyone in construction or in the related businesses has heard of a blower door. It's this red thing in the middle of the screen here. That's not the middle of the screen at all, actually. But so that's a fabric cover on a metal expanding frame that you can size to fit most normal size doors. And then this is a really powerful fan. It can blow 10,000 CFM at max velocity and low pressure. Basically, you blow air into or out of a building. Usually in our climate, you'd blow out, and you depressurize the building, and then you can, go ahead. Oh, sorry, I thought someone had a question. So then you can go around, and I'm in this infrared image here. I'm walking around looking for air leaks, and my guess is I found one right below a window, right? This kind of looks like a window frame. And because it's cold outside, I'm blowing air out of the building. So any hole in the building is going to suck cold air in, and that will cool off the surroundings. And then you can find it really quickly and easily with an infrared camera. So that's a really potent set of tools if you're looking for air leaks or, flaws in your building envelope. And air leaks are the key to a lot of comfort issues and a certain amount of humidity and moisture issues. If your house sucks in outdoor air in the summer, it's going to bring in a ton of moisture, and it's usually going to drop it somewhere where you don't want it. So a lot of weird summertime moisture issues really relate to air movement, and the blower door is a great way to quantify and find air leaks. And please type in questions if you have them. I like being interrupted, and when I think I've explained something and I haven't, it's much better if you say, hey, I didn't, can you go further on that one? Tell me more about that or whatever. As we go along, please, I think we're putting it in chat and then someone's asking, if I remember that right. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's correct. Sean will pose the questions to you as they come in through the chat. So questions, put them in the chat.
Perfect.
Hey, Doug.
Yeah, I see one. Go ahead.
What does the blower door cost?
Yeah. I think a new blower door is like $3,000, and it comes with, now I'm going to go back. I didn't get into this much, but a manometer is another key to this setup. A manometer is a pressure gauge, and there are inexpensive and simple ones that are really easy. Basically a tube of water that's graduated and has a plug at the bottom and the top will give you a pressure reading. The issue is that it's hard when you're trying to diagnose house issues and quantify how much house leakage there is. You need a very, very precise instrument that can accurately read tenths of a Pascal. And a Pascal is an incredibly small number. Like 1 inch of water column is 250 Pascals. And then we're talking about tenths of that. So we're trying to read 2,500 gradations in 1 inch of water column. So you can see that a manometer that uses water is going to be hard to read at that level. Anyway, a manometer comes with a blower door set, and the manometers that come with them are really, really awesome tools. They usually have 2 channels, and they have computers that are set up to make it fast and easy to do various diagnostics with the blower door and other tools that use pressure readings. They can data log, and those tools themselves cost over $1,000. So I've turned this into a very long story, but a whole setup with the manometer, the blower door, and the frame is usually around $3,000, but that's because the tool itself is like $1,000, $1,200, the manometer itself, and the rest of it's a couple grand. Hope that answered the question. Okay.
It did. A follow-up though, as home inspectors, we do a lot of radon testing. Would you recommend blower door and radon testing at the same time? I think the answer is obvious, but could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Someone's trying to set me up.
Yep.
No, you definitely don't want to do that. Although there have been some really cool experiments people have done, either with using a blower door to create a low pressure and using very sensitive, expensive instruments to do instantaneous radon measurements and see how it goes up and down, or using a manometer to check the long-term pressure in a building. There's a guy I know, Peter Yost. Probably a lot of you know Peter if you've been around for a while. He's a really great guy, intensely curious, incredible educator, great person to go see speak. Anyway, he had a radon issue in his basement, and he's been playing around with spray foam and additions and air sealing and all this kind of stuff. And he has a ventilation system, an ERV, and he's started messing around with how changing the pressure in the basement or in the first floor would change the radon readings in each of those levels. So using a very sensitive manometer to measure incredibly low pressure differences, but over a long time frame. So again, I've turned it into a long answer. All right, any other questions right now?
Not right now.
Okay. Okay, one of my favorite diagnostic tools, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, is data loggers. Just dying to know how many folks have found data loggers. They've gotten really, a lot of people are starting to use these because, well, for a lot of reasons. I mean, they were always a great tool. They just used to be pretty inaccessible because they were expensive, and now they're much cheaper and much easier to use. So the ones in this picture, these cost, I think these are 120 each or something along those lines, which isn't inexpensive, but you can get a setup of, like 4 of them. You can do all kinds of incredible diagnostics with 4 data loggers that measure temperature and humidity. And the way these work, they're a little computer. You plug them into your laptop and use the software that comes with them to set up what kind of readings they take and how frequently. So, typically I would set these up to read every 15 minutes for doing kind of days-long temperature and humidity checks. And so I'll show you some stories later, but anyway, those are really cool. I'll just skip that. One of the things that's really great about data loggers is, I didn't really realize this until I started using them, but a lot of the conversations that I was having with clients and architects and engineers and, home inspectors and all these folks just kind of talking about a problem and disagreeing about a problem and leaving a homeowner kind of bewildered and worried and distrustful, all came from the fact that we were all guessing stuff based on our experience, which isn't a bad place to start, but we just didn't have the information that we needed to actually talk about the thing. So one of the first ones I use these on, there was literally 8 people involved in trying to diagnose and solve this problem, and just putting the data in front of all 8 people completely changed the conversation from you did this and this must be wrong and that must be wrong to, oh, I see what's wrong, how do we fix it? So a really great way to go if you're trying to diagnose and solve something.
Hey, Doug.
Yes, sir.
What brand data logger do you use?
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
model?
These are Onset Hobo brand. I don't know why they picked that name.
Do they
I
have
like
a model, or are they just?
So I'll tell. Yeah, let me read the model. Okay, these are UX 100-003, but I wouldn't buy these now because they've come out with new versions that you can read with Bluetooth. These are inexpensive and they're perfectly functional. You just can't get the data on or off of them without plugging them into a computer. And that isn't even that bad, right? It actually, I think clients think it's kind of cool. You pull out your laptop, you're tapping away, you're plugging things in, you're making graphs. Like there's kind of a wow factor to it that is not the worst thing in the world. But nowadays they have, like Hobo makes this exact same instrument, but with Bluetooth capability. And then you can just waltz in there with your phone, download data very quickly without even moving the device. And also you can buy another contraption that talks to all of these that are in a building and sends that data onto the internet where you can read it without having to go to the building, which is actually incredibly helpful. So that's worth it just to save you an hour or 2 of time on your first job. So that's my 2 cents on that. And there are other brands. There's a brand called Sensor Push, which a number of my building science friends are using. It's a little bit less expensive and it's internet enabled. So those are worth looking into. I've kind of bought into the Hobo. Well, it isn't that I bought into their infrastructure, it's that I know how to use their software to make graphs quick. And that's what I usually do. So I'm probably sticking with those unless something compelling comes along. I've also had really good luck with their longevity. So that's my 2 cents on those. But I mean, I talked to someone else who even bought on the internet AccuRite, ACCU-RITE is a kind of a consumer-focused brand, but they have, you can buy a set of 3 temperature and humidity gauges that connect through a base thing to Wi-Fi. And again, you can get all that data through the internet without having to go back to the house. And that whole setup, I think, costs less than one of these. So it's worth looking into. Any other questions on that?
No.
Okay, great. So quick story here. Had some clients, they were walking around their basement and their feet were squishing into the rug and getting water through their socks. Ugh, that's the worst. And these folks, these are the kind of folks who do not know anything about their house and they just want it to work. So they called us and said, we don't know what's wrong. We just know there's water. What do we do? Well, you know, first thing I did was walk over to the wet area and open the doors and see the water heater. So you guys you people, all of us already know what's wrong with this house, right? Or 99% of the time, and that is what was wrong. One of the tanks rusted out and started leaking on the floor. But I could use my infrared camera to tell how much of the carpet had gotten wet, which will tell me how much of a mess I'm gonna have to clean up, and can I do it myself in half an hour with one fan, or do I need to bring in a whole crew of people to start moving furniture and all that stuff? And you can see there's a pool table right next to this spot, but with the infrared camera, it's very easy to tell that I didn't need to move the pool table. So that just kind of gives you the, pulling out the camera, in 1 second, I knew what I had to do and didn't have to do. So that's the great thing with infrared. Yeah, and sure enough, leaky water heater, I'm sure we've done that before. So while I had the infrared camera out, I turned around and I looked up on the ceiling, and with the infrared camera, I saw this. So I'm seeing, if you're not familiar with the infrared camera, the setting that I usually use has this sort of, the warmest temperature in the frame is yellow, and then down kind of through a spectrum to dark purple. And first of all, I really apologize if you don't see colors the way that most people do. there are settings you can use that it's just black and white, so you can still use one of these tools. I think the colors make it easier for me to find it because my eyes can perceive these colors the way they designed it. So anyway, you know, this, I apologize if you're not seeing this, but anyway, these dark spots here, drawing that with my left hand, you can tell it's a mess. Those spots are much cooler than the rest of the ceiling. And that wouldn't make sense for a ceiling to have very cold spots. Also, this is wintertime, not summertime, when maybe a duct would be blowing air on it or something, air conditioning. So, you know, I ran over there to figure out what was going on with that. And sure enough, there was water. You know, I checked it with my moisture meter, and I get a high moisture reading in the drywall there. So I usually use the moisture meter to confirm what I'm seeing. And then I run around upstairs. Oh, there's a bathroom up here. It must be here. Nope. Even though we have all this crazy peeling wallpaper and all that stuff, I think at the end of the day, it turned out that was just bad wallpaper. I hate distractors like that, but man, that was that I was sure that was something going on up there. Sure you've all been there. And you know, when I looked over in this other powder room, I see a cold spot on the floor with the infrared camera. Again, I'm just scanning around with the infrared camera looking for stuff, and you know, found it very quickly. Instead of having to use a moisture meter and test every single part of this whole house, which is what I used to do, and it does work, it just takes longer. You know, I was able to find that there was a drip coming out of the supply for this toilet, and that was the problem. So infrared camera speeds it up. So with the moisture meters, the pinless moisture meters, there's a bunch of different brands. They all work different ways. Actually, you know, our company, a bunch of people in our company have bought kind of inexpensive ones, Ryobi General brand. They're not bad. Actually, I think the Ryobi's in certain regards is better than mine because it has a drywall setting, a wood setting, and a masonry setting, which is really helpful. I've learned by doing to sort of be able to guess what mine is telling me when I use it on stone tile like this, but it's not really made for that. So it's nice with, especially if you're starting out, to just have a button to press. But anyway, you know, the infrared camera doesn't always give you the whole story. I'm actually gonna try to show some ways you can get false readings with an infrared camera. So it's good to have a moisture meter. Another helpful tool is a pin moisture meter. This I'm holding one in my hand. It has two extremely sharp pins. Actually, I wish we could set up a poll in this thing. Maybe we can, but you know, raise your hand if you poked yourself with your pin moisture meter. Yeah, raise your hand if you did it the last time you had the pins open, and pretty much every time. I don't know how I do it, but my hand is magnetically sucked to these pins, and they're really sharp, right? You can jam this right into wood. Anyway, this it measures electrical current resistance between these two pins, and the more water there is, the less resistance, and then the computer inside kind of changes it to a reading. Usually these are usually set up to give you a % of moisture content in the wood, which is a useful number for a variety of purposes. In this case, there's probably going to be an insurance claim, and I'm just taking pictures showing a moisture reading with a relatively accurate meter that can help convince the insurance company that there was a real problem where we were working. It is a great tool for rough wood that you can put holes all over. And I think it can be more accurate in certain circumstances than the pinless ones. But I'm making that into a long story, and each different brand and technology works a slightly different way. So I've actually found that the pinless one is pretty much as useful for almost anything I ever use it for, other than woodworking. All right, one more issue. Here's another case study. Clients called us, there's water dripping out of our ceiling, and the water was dripping out over here. But when I got out the thermal camera, I could see that they actually had some water in other places. So they hadn't even realized that it went down over here. and down the wall. And then it turned out that the actual leak right above this area, and some of the water had traveled over and come down this wall, but that would have misled me to where the issue was if I hadn't had the camera to turn on and look through it. Okay, let me try to do this. I'm really going rocket science level here. I'm gonna change cameras and I'm gonna show you, yeah, it's working, it's working. So we're now looking at an infrared image of a sample board. Now I'm going to knock over the sample board and change the whole thing. Okay, so this is a game. I have 8 samples here, and the game is, pick which one of these has had a moisture issue or is having a moisture issue. Okay, so, and we're going to try it, we're going to test it 4 different ways. One is with infrared. So, I already mentioned the dark purple colors tend to be things that are wet, and the lighter yellow colors tend to be things that aren't as wet. One thing to know about infrared cameras is in their normal setting, all the ones that I've ever used, they automatically set the yellow color to the hottest thing in the frame and the purple color to the coldest thing in the frame, whatever those are. Those could be 150 degrees different. Those could be 3 degrees different. It's still going to show some things bright yellow and some things dark purple. So I think I've kind of confused my camera here by having warm things behind the sample board. So it's not discriminating as much on the sample board as I might have liked. Let's see if I can just tilt that a bit. The answer is probably no. Anyway, what are we seeing here? Maybe put in the chat which one of these is the coldest. Can you see the numbers on the screen? There we go. All right, and then are there others that seem cold and others that don't seem as cold? I guess we're really going to want to say, you can just remember if you want 1 through 8, which ones are warm, which ones are cold. If you're really playing along, you'll write it down, and I'll give you another 10 seconds for that. Any questions or comments on that? Anyone have anything else to say about using an infrared camera? There you go, 8765. How about that? How can we enlarge this photo? That's where we're having a hassle because I don't know how to run this meeting software.
If you go to the top of the screen and it says view who's talking, I'm sorry, it would say view everyone is the factory default. Where it says view everyone, click that and go down and click who's talking. If you're on a phone or something like that, it's not going to be the same, and I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. Is there a way to unshare my screen temporarily, or is that a terrible idea?
No, you can try it.
Oh, stop sharing screen. There we go. Okay. Is that helpful? Is now if you do what you just said, change it from view everyone to who's talking, then you'll see, hopefully you'll see better. Okay, great. Okay. I've spent enough time on the infrared, so now we're going to pull out the moisture meter.
Oh, there was one comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Remember not to use the infrared camera on shiny metal surfaces. It'll just give you the reflection.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I mean, I'm sure whoever set this up wouldn't have selected anything like that to try to trick anyone. All right. So as I said, this is a protometer. I'm using the pinless mode. I'm going to test it on my arm. I literally do this every time because I do have an unfortunate habit of switching between pin and pinless mode and then forgetting and then getting bad readings. In fact, the first time I did this demonstration for the guys at work, I did that and I had to go back and read. Anyway, all right, so let's see. We're going to put it on number 1, and I don't know if you can see this. I'll help out. All right, I'm getting no reading at all, which with this meter means that it's on the default and it's getting, basically it thinks it's dry. Okay, so that's 1. All right, 2. All right, I'm reading in the at-risk range. This meter, in the pinless mode, this meter does not try to tell you that it's giving you a percentage. It just has this sort of arbitrary scale of 0 to 999, and those don't add up to anything. But anyway, it's giving partway up that scale on 2. All right, and you can take notes on this or not. You can just try to remember if you want. All right, ooh, 3, I'm up at 200 on number 3. All right, number 4, I'm reading in the green range here, so 119. All right, number 5. I'm reading sort of in the 70s and 80s. It's actually changing. That's kind of interesting as I go around. Huh. All right, well, anyway, in the 70s and 80s, so a lot lower than these two, but, higher than this one. Okay, 6. Oh, 362. It's angry moisture meter. Listen to how fast it's beeping. 397. Yeah, so as I said, I really like this tool because you can scan a lot of stuff real quick and find the problem real quick. All right. Number 7, 212, so kind of similar to those two. And number 8, 120. Okay. Now I'm going to switch to the pin mode. Oops. Okay, this time I remembered. And I'm using a remote pin set. If you ever work with a stucco inspector, a lot of times they have basically it's the same kind of meter, but instead of the pins being on the meter, they have a special hammer that knocks long insulated pins down into the stucco or EIFS, and it doesn't read the outer layer because the pins are insulated. It reads way down inside. Those are actually really nice for certain diagnostics. And I got a set of those pins, but I haven't used them very much, but what I found them great for is foam insulation.
Don't stab yourself. Be careful.
Oh my God. Yes, thank you. I'm sure I'm about to stab myself. Okay, so number 1. Oh. So I'm reading, this is saying 9% wood moisture content. Now I'm not sure if I'm reading wood, so I'm not sure if that's an accurate reading, but let's see here, number 2. All right, 42%. Number 3, 63%. Wow. All right, number 4, I got 11%. All right, number 5, also 10%. Am I holding this so you can see it? That would really be funny if I wasn't. 11%. All right. Number 6. 8.0. Yep, 8.0. Okay. Number 7. 10. And last. All right. That one's reading 9.9. Okay. So now we're through 3 different types of diagnostics. Now we're going to do the 4th one, which is just a visual inspection, which, is really important for interpretation of what you're seeing. All right. So this camera view could be a little better. Let's see if I can zoom us in here. Yeah, okay. All right. This first one is a piece of drywall. Anyone notice anything interesting about it?
Looks wet.
It looks wet. Yeah, but what were we reading? Yeah, low reading, 10. With that tool, and then no reading at all with the moisture meter.
But
and was that one cold or was it warm?
It was warm.
Yeah. So
it's been wet in the past.
Say again?
It's been wet in the past.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So that's it. So yeah, it has mold all over it. Sorry, biological growth all over it. And but it doesn't make any of my tools ring because it's dried out. So this is why visual inspection can be, no substitute for some of these tools. Or the other way around, I guess. Okay. This one was warm, right? Number 2, but it's actually a soaking wet sponge, but it has a impermeable cover over it. So the reason that infrared cameras show things as cold when they're wet is because of evaporation off the surface. The evaporation cools down the surface. But if moisture can't evaporate out through the surface, it doesn't cool down. So in this case, we have something that's quite wet, no evaporation, no temperature change. The moisture meter picked it up, but the infrared camera did not. And I found this out, like, one of the first things I ever tried with the infrared camera was looking at a hardwood floor issue. The hardwood floor was finished and no moisture was evaporating through that finish, so I could not see the parts that were wet compared to the parts that were dry. Different finishes perform different ways, but that's the situation with that. All right, who was the smart person with the shiny surface? That's what we're looking at here. So shiny surface hidden behind Tyvek does not throw off the infrared camera because you're looking at the infrared. Actually, Tyvek is weird. I'm turning this into a much too long of a story. Anyway, the metal in this tape makes the pinned moisture meter go crazy. So this actually isn't even wet. It even makes the pinless meter go crazy. So when I scan around a wall with my pinless moisture meter, if I roll over a drywall screw, it gives me a high reading for half a square inch. And likewise, this metal and this tape make the moisture meter go berserk, but doesn't. When it's shiny, if you could see the shininess with your infrared camera, it would throw that off too. You'd basically see your reflection of whatever's bouncing off of it. Today I was working on a shower diagnostic, and I thought I saw, we were using hot water because you throw hot water through a leak, you can see it with the infrared camera really clearly. And I saw a hot spot, and it was literally my face reflecting off the shower glass. Oops. All right, so this is a piece of wood, and I think I messed this up because it's supposed to read different top and bottom, but I don't think I got it wet enough. And then I also think, normally I do this outside, but it's not really weather to do this outside. So I was trying to play around inside. Anyway, normally, as I said, hardwood floor with infrared, the finished area will not get cold because water won't evaporate through a good polyurethane finish. The unfinished area will get cold because water will evaporate off of that. I think that's what we had though, right? Wasn't the bottom colder than the top? Anyway, this is just plain old drywall, no problems, all good. What was this one? Number 6, PDM, roofing. Makes moisture meters go crazy. And I've tried doing thermal diagnostics on that. Has anyone else tried that? I have had really bad luck, even getting up at 4 a.m. to be out there before dawn. I assume the black sky radiation effect overwhelms anything you get from having wet insulation under EPDM. So I've not had good luck finding leaks through EPDM. This one again is metal, and then we already talked about that one. All right, how'd we do? Who won? We all won. All right, let me share my screen again.
Everybody's a winner.
Yep, everybody's a winner. And let's see. Okay, like I said, I'm really testing the limits of my computer ability here. All right, please throw your questions in the chat. And okay. Oh, we already talked about a manometer. Let me just show a couple of things I've done with that. This is the one that came with my blower door. They don't really sell these anymore, which is good because it's got one of the worst human interfaces you've ever seen. I've made several mistakes just by it's not very clear what to do with stuff. Anyway, in this picture, I'm actually testing a house's pressure versus the outdoors. And I'm reading the house is 4.7 pascals negative compared to the outdoors. And there's kind of a rule of thumb that anything over maybe 3 pascals, you should really kind of start thinking about, like, that's going to cause problems. And in this particular house, it was causing problems. They had their ventilation system, which was fancy and nice, had a problem with it. and it was unbalancing the house. So it was exhausting more air than it was bringing in. And that meant that every small hole in the shell of this house was leaking copious amounts of air 24/7, 365. And in the summertime, that would bring in a lot of moisture and cause problems. So we were able to figure that out and get the HVAC company on board and fix it. I've found that using a manometer, you can fix weird fireplace problems. So here's a house with an even higher negative pressure in this room. This is yeah. So long story short, we they have a ventilation air. Hey, look at that. FLIR One Pro is only 200 at Walmart.com. That's awesome. That's better than the one I have, and it's it's a very good tool. In this situation, these folks, the fireplace worked fine when the fire was big, but then as it started to go out and the draft started to drop, it would start smoking the house, like the air wouldn't continue going up the chimney, and that's because this level of the house was running negative, and this happens a lot of the time. Sure, you've seen complaints and heard complaints about fireplaces, and there's kind of two ways to fix this. Generally, every time that I've looked into this, the reason why the main level of the house is negative pressure is because so much air is leaking out the top that it's just sucking the whole house out. And you can air seal the top of the house, but that's complicated and expensive. So people usually don't do that. They usually you can tell them exactly how wide a window has to be open to even out the pressure in their house, or in this case, they had a makeup ventilation system for their range hood, and we just gave them a manual switch so they could open that 10-inch round vent whenever they felt like it, whenever they were running a fire, and that worked perfectly. And we verified that evened out the pressure using the manometer. But here's another way to do it. Like, I actually think this is more useful than the manometer in certain situations. Just tape plastic up over your, the thing you're trying to check, and it'll tell you either the pressure is going to blow in or out. You can even just use like a ribbon of light material, plastic or whatever, and it will flap whichever way the air is moving, even if the air is moving very slowly. So can you believe you're getting credit from the state of Maryland for someone to tell you to use a piece of plastic to tell which way the air is blowing? Don't laugh, I've used this. Here I am checking between two parts of a house, works great. Okay, so let me tell some data logger stories. Here's one. We built this super fancy house with an architect and an engineer and a house manager and and another house manager, fiscal manager. It was a crew. There's a lot of people involved. Anyway, they got ice on their windows when it got cold outside, and they didn't like having ice on their windows and running across their 6-inch maple plank floors. So everyone said, the architect said we must have installed the windows wrong, and we actually thought we must have installed the windows wrong, and we kind of looked around at that, and it turned out we hadn't. So this is what it looked like on a typical cold winter morning. This is when it got down to much below 20, you get this situation. Yeah, it was a lot of water too. Even the things that weren't ice, this white stuff is ice. I don't know if this is clear. These are black windows, and that white stuff is, literally ice forming on it. And then over here, you can kind of tell that there's condensation all over the parts that aren't covered with ice, or both, like here on this window frame. So this one is actually an air leak through the window frame, but this isn't, and this isn't. We were trying to figure out what was going on. So as I said, this is one where everybody was pointing fingers, and every person involved had a theory about what it was, and everyone wanted us to do a different thing to try to fix it. So I thought it might be good to get some data. We had these data loggers. I clamped a temperature sensor up onto a window frame, and this is where the recorder is. Some of these recorders you can plug in remote sensors, so that's kind of had. And it's also measuring the temperature in the room, and we're measuring the humidity in the room and all that. So, as I said, we recorded like every 15 minutes. These are my first set of sensors. They would record for a month at 10 minutes. The ones I have now, the ones I'm using now, these record like a year and a half at 15 minutes. So they're you can leave them for longer without getting in trouble. You do kind of have to wait for the weather that you need to have the problem show back up. That's one of the really nice things with these. It's there recording when you get that weather. They make special outdoor ones, but I'm really, really cheap, so I usually just put one in a plastic bag and hide it in the bushes. I I haven't lost any yet, but I did find one. The plastic bag was completely full of water and had been moved. I think they trimmed the bushes over the time frame, so that was a mistake. Anyway, you can spend for the good ones and get good outdoor temperatures. This is the data that you get after I download it into a spreadsheet. You can see it's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of numbers. One thing I like to do is start them and just carry them out to the job site all together in a group, so you can verify that they're all reading pretty much the same temperature. So this, you can see two of these are reading 71.77 and one 71.08. Not different enough to make a big difference in my situation, but if that was 3 or 4 degrees different, then that might be something I either have to correct for or I have to not use that logger. And then you can kind of see from this point down, the outdoor air temperature goes from the same temperature in my backpack or whatever I was carrying these in, and after I place it, drops down, and then you can see from this point on it's sort of even, the outdoor temperature. So that's how I know that's when the data is good, from that point on. So I just cut off those first few rows after I make sure that everything was reading about the same when they were together. We can see we've got this. You can either do relative humidity or dew point. In this case, we use dew point because dew point tells you more exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for when is the humidity in the air going to start condensing on this surface. So we want to know the dew point of that air. And in this case, we're looking at the window frame temperature in purple, the dew point in yellow, and you can see the outdoor temperatures in aqua. So you can see the window frame temperature follows the outdoor temperature, about 10 degrees warmer roughly. We didn't have a problem on this night or this night where the window frame temperature went just a little bit below the dew point. But on this night where the window frame temperature came down here, 5 degrees lower than the dew point, they got a lot of ice on the windows. So that tells us this is the scenario when we're having the issue. We've got window frames around 32 degrees. You're going to have condensation and ice. So this picture is simple and clear. To me, this is very legible. Not to everyone, but like the architect liked this. It was very simple. Just shows the key things. The engineer like this one, it has relative humidity, it has the indoor temperature, it has the outdoor temperature, it has all the stuff so they can, do their magic and feel comfortable. When I talk to the client, this client is, she's an executive at a tech company and she works with spreadsheets all day long. She wanted my spreadsheet, so I emailed her the spreadsheet, and she didn't look at the graphs. She combed through, she set parameters to show the high and low points during the time frame and all this other stuff. And I think she actually ended up using conditional formatting, which is a thing you can use in the spreadsheet. Whenever the window frame temperature is below the dew point of the air, highlight those cells, kind of thing. And that was how she wanted to see it. Good for her. And I already talked about this. Let's go. All right. And then just so you know, we were able to solve this. They had humidifiers in this house, and we put outdoor temperature controls on the humidifiers and turned them off on the coldest nights. And we played around with the settings for a while, and the clients were really worried about their humidity going down too much. And because we're really only turning it off for a few hours a night, and only maybe 10 or 15 nights a year, it didn't make a huge difference in the overall humidity in the house. It just stopped blowing humidified air on the windows on the cold nights, and that fixed it. So, well, we talked about all this. They're very powerful tool, really helpful. Type in your questions if you have any. I'm going to jump into another case study. This is one where I have a room that is only on the coldest nights, is really cold only in the mornings. It's a teenager who shuts their door at night, and my HVAC guy actually came into this, $1 million renovation and said, I'm reading the temperature here and it's within 3 degrees of the hallway. So, this meets our warranty standards. And we were like, but the problem happened 3 hours ago when it was actually cold in here and the door was shut, and he was like, nope, I can't read a difference here. No, not a problem. So that inspired me to go out and buy a bunch of these, and I started recording all the temperatures in this area. So just really quickly, I got one in the in the bedroom where the issue is, one outdoors, one I like to put one at the thermostat so I kind of know what the thermostat's sensing. And then I also, if I have one, I put one in the non-problem room. That way I can see if there's anything weird happening throughout the house and only one person's complaining. All right,
Hey,
I think
Doug.
I saw a question pop up. Go ahead.
On that last one with the humidity on the windows, what would you charge for a service like that? And then what was their target humidity level in that house?
Oh, good questions. Really good questions. So I think like a lot of clients, they had it set above 40, well above 40, which is a mistake. Most houses in a normally built house in our area should not have humidity much above 40, in my opinion, because every time the temperature goes below 25 or so, you'll start getting moisture accumulation and condensation on the windows and anything else, even things you can't see. So it's really risky to run your humidity much above 40. That's my 2 cents on that. Anyway, they had it set above 40. We topped them down to, I think, mid 30s, which seems to perform fine. People are comfortable. Your wood doesn't shrink too much. And as I said, we did put those controls on to stop it blowing the humidity on the windows on the coldest nights. There was a second question.
What do you charge for something like that?
Oh, yeah. So that's a great question. We rarely do this as a service, but our consulting rate it's around $200 an hour, and then we have a rental rate for these. I think it's $125 for up to a week, and no limit on how many we use. Does that make sense? So I think you can just make something like up like that. Hey, we're going till 9:30. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I found out in this graph is showing that I'm getting, this is one of the temperature readings. It's 10 degrees hotter than everything else. I put it on top of a thermostat, and I later realized that thermostat was like a really fancy one, and it was like a computer. It had heat pouring out the top of it. So don't put them on top of your thermostat. These new ones have magnets, so you just stick them wherever you want, on a corner bead or a switch or something like that.
Hey, Doug.
I also had this one. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, man. Follow up on the humidity. It's 23%. So guy says it's 23% humidity in the living space in my home currently. How do I safely get the humidity up without overdoing it?
I think that's going to be a long story. I mean, I'll tell you, my own experience was that my house was somewhat leaky. I found when I was training to use a blower door, I was sucking air in down through the hallway down the middle of my house from the attic. I had no idea there was air leaks there. So I went up in my attic and I did this thing called attic air sealing, which if you Google, there's an EPA illustrated guide that was done by some really smart people. And that's my recommendation, is you seal up your attic. That will keep a lot of the humidity inside your house, and you may not need a humidifier. That's what happened in my house. I don't have a humidifier, but it's way more comfortable.
Are humidifiers on an HVAC system more trouble than not having or running it?
No, I mean, some of our bigger houses, the ratio of my family to my house keeps my house humidified in winter, because we, shower, breathe, and cook enough. But we've built, 20,000 square foot houses for people. They need humidifiers because they just don't put enough humidity for that volume. And your house may be like that, depending on what you do, if you don't cook or whatever. So humidifiers are probably a good thing in many houses. I just think it's the second thing I would personally do. I would start with sealing up the shell of your house so that you're not blowing outdoor air through it at high velocity 24/7, 365. And then there are a number of different kinds of humidifiers. I have my personal thoughts on it, but I think I would just start with a cheap standalone one, but having a control or checking the level you're getting to is important. Like I said, for me, if you're much above 40, you're getting into a risky zone with a normal house in our area. All right. All right, I'm gonna actually, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
One last one.
Yeah, please.
No, you do one more.
Oh, one last slide. I was like, I gotta wrap this up. We're done. Yeah, so, well, I'll just tell you what is on this slide. See these two little yellow spikes? That's the temperature in a sensor that I have in a bedroom. Any thoughts on what that would be? Go ahead and type it in. Sean, I'm waiting. I'm going to assume some of you are typing. I'll just go ahead and tell you. So this is where the sun hit, direct sun hit my little sensor. He farted. Good one. Good one. It could have been it. I heard that someone posted on Twitter that their air quality sensor, they were amusing themselves by farting near it the other day. Anyway, yeah, so I put this thing out where the sun could hit it. I thought I was being careful, but I wasn't. So now I hide them behind the pictures. Yeah, like this. I like put them behind people's junk on their shelves so the sun can't hit it directly. All right, any questions on anything? So I hope that was helpful. You know, these tools are terrific. Use them all the time. They're amazing. You do kind of have to spend a little bit of time, especially with like infrared, to understand the what's going to go right and what's not going to go right, so that you're ready when that happens. All right, any other questions? What was the issue with the teens room? Oh yeah, basically it was at the end of the HVAC run, and the thermostat was in the hallway, and so it was always satisfied. So we moved the thermostat into the master bedroom, which you should always do anyway, and I think we added a zone for that bedroom. Hope that's helpful. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier. I also stopped using that HVAC guy. I mean, forget that guy.